Welcome to Holly and Martin Do Road Safety. Martin and I are road safety officers for Suffolk County Council's road safety team, and we are here to hopefully provide you with some useful advice for life on the road. Morning, Martin.
Hi, Holly.
We are joined by Jules Dagnall and Claire Waterhouse from Child Seat Safety to learn about their role and why child seats are so important. Morning, Claire. Morning, Jules.
Morning.
Morning.
Great today. We've got the go-to people for child seat safety. But Claire, can you just, for those of us who probably don't know too much, what is child seat safety?
Child seat safety has been set up almost 10 years. Both Jules and I, our background is we were both road safety managers in the northwest of England for many years. We've stopped counting because it makes us feel very old. We're trying to educate, train and people on all aspects of road safety. But as you know, you tend to have a bit of a bent for a subject. Certainly for Jules, hers was child car seats, and she ran the in-car safety centre at Wigan for many years. We kind of decided that we really needed some sort of qualification for people who were giving advice on car seats. Like you wouldn't, obviously, you can't fit a gas fire, etc., without being, Corgi registered or whatever, or gas safe as it is these days. Really, that was needed. So we had a standard of knowledge for people. And I think it was a bit of a light bulb moment. It grew from that, really. So it started with the course, which was what we wanted to get out there to people so that people had that qualification if they were giving advice and they knew what they were talking about, really, rather than it being Chinese whispers going on, sort of thing that happens on chat forums, Mumsnet and those sorts of things, where you get people giving their opinion and their advice. It can be contradictory, and we do lots of other things now as well. So we do a lot of check events across the country. A lot of those are classed as enforcement ones, so the police are involved and we're stopping people and checking seats, etc., as well as community ones. We do a lot of work with the retailers now as well. We do a lot of advice and policy writing for social services teams, so they're transporting other people's children. And very often it's quite a grey area for them, and they tend to be more concerned about what happens if the child's sick or something like that. They don't at it from the fact that the person who's driving is actually responsible for that child in the car, even though it's probably not theirs.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Jules, is there one particular moment that made you realise the importance of child seats?
Really, it was a case of being at a conference. It was hosted by Which Consumer Magazine, and they brought together all sort of industry experts, but went along from sort of representing Road Safety Great Britain in my role as the local authority road safety manager. There was much discussion during the day about making sure that people's, knowledge, etc., was at a certain level, and it was only then that I sort of thought, why could you be allowed to just set yourself up tomorrow as a car seat expert selling car seats, having had no experience? It was from that point that I then spoke after the meeting with some of the experts that were there, Which, etc., ROSPA, and they said, well, you do it then. And I was like, I don't think it's me that should be doing this. I don't think I'm the person. But, with their support, let's set it up. That I then said to Claire, I'll do it if you will. And that's and I think probably both the skill sets that we've got fitted perfectly into what we needed.
In COVID times, obviously you can't travel as much. Well, you can't travel at all at the moment. But I understand you've got new ways of working now.
Yes, unfortunately we can't travel, and as you know, it's a massive part of our role to be travelling around the country, delivering the course and doing check events, etc. So we've taken it online. We've got agreement from IOSH. So IOSH is the organisation, stands for Institute. I can't remember what it stands for now.
Occupational Safety and Health.
Thank you. I have one of those sort of blank moments. So we got agreement from IOSH to take it online, because obviously from our point of view it's quite a practical course. It's not easy, and we've split it over 2 days so that people don't get zoomed out, because otherwise it would just be far too much. And we have then so they can do the online, and then they have the option of doing a practical element at a later date if they so wish, because some people want that physical fitting of seats, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So therefore, just doing the online isn't sort of giving them what they need really. So they have the option of doing a practical element, obviously when we can. So at the moment, we've gone into national lockdown again. So we're not actually delivering anything January, February. Our next one's March. But yeah, we've gone online with it, and it's worked well, and it's meant that the people who perhaps would never have dreamt of coming on the course because of maybe the travelling and things like that, or maybe because of their interest, have actually come on board with it. So our courses that we had at the end of the year were quite full really, which was great, and a lot of people from abroad as well, because there's nothing like this abroad at the moment.
Really?
No, so ours seems to be the only qualification course that you can do. So we had a lot of people from Romania, where sort of like child seat safety seems to be becoming quite a prevalent thing over there at the moment. Okay. So, but we have had people from all over the place. We did a course by people from America and things like that. So we're looking at a new project at the moment called the Family Car, which will be a more parent-focused website where we've done reviews of cars and how suitable they are for a family. So normally you sort of read a review of a car and it's about how quick from 0 to 60 and how many miles per gallon do you get, this sort of stuff. And there's never really much about how convenient that car is. So that's what we've done. So we've taken the top cars that we see at check events, so the most popular kind of family cars that people seem to be using, and we've done reviews on those, from how many seats can you get in it properly, what are the boot spaces like for prams and shopping and this sort of thing, to things like, can you turn the radio off in the back? If you stop, your child's gone to sleep and you've stopped and you open your door, does it ping like crazy because you've left your key in the ignition? That sort of thing.
You never seem to think about that sort of thing until you have a child. It never even crossed my mind that stuff like that would matter.
No, because obviously if you've just got them to sleep because you've driven however far to get them to go to sleep, and then you open your car door and it pings and it wakes them up. So, and your sat nav and things like that. Where can you turn the volume down so it's just sort of coming in the front of the vehicle? So all sorts of bits and pieces like that. So we've done reviews on the cars. We've done reviews on car seats as well. And then we're also, we've got a virtual appointment advice section. So you can book an online appointment to talk to one of the team about any concerns you've got with your car seat. So we've had a lot of questions over like the lockdown periods. And because the stores are closed, the retailers are closed, people got nowhere to go. And if they're buying online, they're not getting the advice that they would be getting if they were going into the retailer. So hopefully that will help.
Excellent, thank you. Jules, is there one particular problem that parents often seem to get wrong?
I think the most common problem that we see, which is rectifiable, very easily rectifiable, is to do with harnesses and not getting them tight enough. And one of the things we always say is there's no point in having a perfectly fitted car seat if you've not got the perfectly fitted child into it, because obviously in a crash, all that's going to happen is the child's going to come out of the seat. And that could be, the reason the harness could be incorrect around the child is because several things, you've not got it tight enough around the child. So parents say, we don't want to squash them, which, there is a quick way of checking it, and we call it the pinch test. So you pull the harness nice and tight. It sits across their chest, make sure it's tight across the hips. And then if you can get any sort of pinch, so if you can pinch the actual webbing on the harness, so best to do it sort of by the collarbone, if you can do that. If it's got a shoulder pad on it, don't worry, just do it a little bit lower. If you can get any sort of pinch on that harness, then it's too loose, give it another tighten up. Now, just like what usually happens with adults, everybody does it. A child will sit in a car seat and sit very upright on the first part of the journey, and then they sort of slouch and get comfortable into that seat. So by making sure it's tight, when they actually sort of like relax into the seat, that bit will then still be okay. So I always say to parents, don't think it's broken, don't think it's gone loose. It hasn't. It's just that they've just relaxed into the seat. The other reason that they may not get the harness right is that it's in the wrong position on the shoulder. So you need it to be on the shoulder. If you can't do that, because sometimes you only get certain, you can only lift it into certain positions or drop it down into certain positions because they're kind of set on the seat. So if it's a rearward facing seat, you want it to go just below the shoulder. And if it's a forward facing seat, you want it to go just above the shoulder if you can't get it ideally on.
And obviously avoiding all winter coats and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's another big issue is thick clothing. So even a hoodie, hoodies, believe it or not, with the quite often they don't put the hoods up, so they sit around the back of the neck of the child, and it means that the child is tipped forward, so it pushes the head and the chin down. So newborns, small babies like that can block an airway. So just think what we always say again. Our other top tip is snug is good. Make sure that the seat fits them properly and that the harness is tight around them, but also indoor clothes in the car. If you're worried that baby's going to be cold, because I appreciate it, we're at the start of the year, we're in the winter season at this moment in time. What you can do is fasten the harness, and then for toddlers especially, put their coat on top back to front, so they can use their arms still, they can hold their favourite teddy bear, whatever, they can do those sorts of things in the car, but it's still keeping them warm. And then when they jump out of the car, their coat's not cold, they're still going to be warm when they go out. With little ones, place a blanket over them, but just please make sure that the blanket won't stop the seat from working how it should do in a crash. So some seats that are held in with seat belts do need to move in a crash. The seat belt will work with that, and that blanket could stop that from happening. So just place it over them. Don't go tucking it all in to stop it doing it. Just place it over them. If they get too warm, they'll kick it off, which is another good benefit to it.
Yeah, Claire, obviously if people come to you, they get good, useful information. But of course, some people don't do that. I'm just wondering, generally in the country, do you think information that's available is good? Just to give you an example, I've got a meeting this afternoon online with some social workers, and usually one of the questions I ask is, are children allowed to be carried in the front seat of a car? And I usually get puzzled looks, some saying yes, some saying no, and some not even sure. What do you think?
Okay, I think, again, hopefully if they come to us, they get the correct advice. And if they go to a retailer, they get the correct advice. I think the problem comes when you've got a lot of these like Facebook groups, etc., that people kind of post a question on there and then everybody throws their comments in. Yeah. And it gets a bit mixed up and it can get a bit contradictory. So one person, because they've heard something, will say, no, it's this, that and the other, and then somebody else, well, no, I've actually heard this, and then the poor parent is completely confused. I think from social services point of view, and it's kind of a little bit different because that's a work thing rather than a parent thing, if that kind of makes sense. And that the social workers need to understand what their role is from a work perspective when they're transporting other people's children. We spent a lot of time with local authorities across the country advising their social care teams about what they need to be doing and doing audits on their seats, because one thing that does happen is they're using seats that are really, really old. They don't look old because they don't get used that often. Really,
I think some of the social workers see the importance of using car seats because they're transporting the children and they're nervous about it. And I think that's how we get involved with them, because the social services teams, the actual people working on the ground, turn to us and go, we need extra help here.
If they were involved in a crash, then that's going to be investigated. And if there's anything that's not right, then there's massive repercussions from that. So they need to understand the importance of it. It needs to be within their policy for transporting children. It needs to be written in there, and it needs to be at a much higher level than it seems to be at the moment.
Yeah. Assuming they meet the legal standards, do all car seats provide the same level of safety?
So, there's two standards that you can go for. So the older version is 4404 and the newer version is called Regulation 129. Most people commonly know it as I-size. To be sold and to be manufactured in the UK, it definitely has to have one of those two standards. They undertake many tests. The 129 I-size test includes sort of strict to stringent testing. 4404 came out in 2006, so it's quite an old standard, but a 129 would be the big test that is done at the moment. On top of that, then you'll get additional testing that can be done. That doesn't mean that the other seats have failed in any way. For example, an I-size standard, it's either pass or fail. It's not you scored 70%, another seat scored 100%. Okay. It's a pass or a fail. So manufacturers like to know, is ours better than others? So if you think about the Which Best Buy tests, they're fed in through a German motoring organisation called ADAC. Car seat manufacturers can't choose to have their seats tested like that. They are picked. They'll take those seats and they will test those seats above and beyond what is expected of the normal standard. Now, that has its advantages to the manufacturer because then they've got a higher level of testing that's been done and some sort of like recognised certification on that seat. Yeah. You couldn't sort of say there is one premium test that we would want our car seats to conform to. What I would be saying is look for a seat that's in your budget that reaches the best that you can possibly do.
Yeah, so the additional costs are for the gadgets and the add-ons and things.
Absolutely. If you think about, how much it would cost them to make sure that their seat has very good side impact protection, we do know that just even some sort of locking clips, the design process that goes into these seats, they can cost up to £250,000 to design, to test, and that's just one section of the seat. They are a life-saving product.
Yeah, following on from that, Claire, actually, is for any potential new parents who are listening in, probably one of the most important questions is what's the budget? But what other kind of questions? What should they be looking for?
I think the most important thing they can do is go to a retailer, because that way they will get all the help and advice that they need. The retailer will ask them questions about what kind of journeys they do. They'll ask them about their vehicle, and they'll be able to find them a seat that fits with their lifestyle. If they are going to be swapping the seat from car to car, then they want something that's easy to do, because if it's not, then that's when people start to take shortcuts and don't do it correctly.
I think the other thing is, don't be afraid of going back to the retailer. So you might have bought a seat that does several ages, several groups. And I know a lot of retailers that we work with, especially with new parents, pregnant mums who've not had the baby yet, they've got the car seat, they will say, once you've had a baby and you've settled in, bring them back in. We'd love to see baby. We'll make sure everything's all right, that you're doing everything all right. You've got the harness around the little one right. And as your child grows, come back. We'll make sure the harness is in the right position. Go back to them. They'll help you do that. That's a service that they offer that you don't get online.
Jules, is there any examples of poorly fitted seats that you've come across?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's anything that would shock us anymore about what people do with car seats and the way that they fasten them in. Grandparents who are making them extra safe by putting bungee clips on them and using tie wraps that you might use in the, in your DIY, that type of thing. What you've got to remember about doing these is that you're making an alteration to a seat. You are doing something that it hasn't been crash tested with, so if you start using additional tetherings and ropes and things like that, thinking you're doing your bit, all well and good, but in a crash test, will the seat work as it should, or could it actually literally split the seat in half? You may think you've done that right, and I appreciate why you've done it, but really it's not going to work in a crash like that, and we don't know if it will protect your child, so we need to take those things off. And a lot of the time, sometimes the seats do move slightly, especially if they're held in with a seatbelt, because of that inertia kicking in on the seatbelt. So it's just giving them that bit of advice. As for things that we've seen, I had one guy who got pulled up by the police at a check event. Was just winding his window down. I thought he was quite smartly dressed, got a tie on. Then I realised his tie was moving and it was a snake around his neck. You do. I've had a guy with a parrot on his shoulder. He wasn't a pirate, but he did have a parrot on his shoulder in the car, which the police officer had to advise him it's probably not the best thing to do, and it's live transport of things. Crisp packets.
Crisp packet, yeah, car seat was actually hidden by the amount of crisp packets that were in there.
Yeah, we're going to have to wrap up shortly, but that actually has just brought me onto something. What do you feel about the sort of movements to try and keep rearward facing for longer, like the seats they traditionally have in Scandinavia?
When we deliver our course, obviously we talk about rearward and forward facing and the difference between the two and the different forces that are applied to the child. And we always say we have to be quite neutral about it. It seems that the optimum age is keep a child rearward until they're at least 2. Above that, obviously, looking at their bones and their development, etc. Above that, there's not a massive amount of difference. Again, it's about personal choice. 25% of our road collisions in the UK are side impact crashes. Therefore, we need that protection. And if the seat is rear facing, there's no protection there from the pillars of the vehicle, which there are if they're forward facing. Keep a child rear facing for as long as you possibly can. Certainly to 2 is the best.
Yeah.
If you want to go above that, absolutely fine. That's not a problem. And seats for extended rear facing are getting smaller with the introduction of eye size and things like that. So they're not as big and as bulky as they used to be. We do see a lot of children who have been put forward facing at 7 months of age. And that is totally inappropriate. Their bodies just can't cope with that.
That's really useful to me because I come across a lot of parents who I think there's family pressure. The child's starting to sit up and the family tell them they should be forward facing and not rearward facing. Thanks, that's been really useful.
Thank you so much, Jules and Claire. I've learnt so much information, and hopefully, if I'm lucky enough to be able to have a child, I can come to you two for some advice.
Yeah, you know where we are, Holly.
Well, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure that I'll be able to leave Jules and Claire's information in the description box. If there are parents listening, where's the best place to contact you?
Okay, so you can go to our website, which is www.childseatsafety.co.uk. You can obviously, contact us through our email, which is info@childseatsafety.co.uk. And then, obviously, like I said, we're going to be launching the family car, hopefully in February. So that'll be another place that parents can go for information. And we've got Facebook, we've got Twitter, etc. And we've got a YouTube channel as well. And on that YouTube channel, there are videos about fitting and things like that, and advice about travelling, etc. And you can find that YouTube link from our website. On the website, there is a tab for Find an Advisor. So anybody that's done our IOSH qualification and wishes to be listed on our Find an Advisor, so there's people locally you can go to for help, can be on there. So it's there's a map of the country, and you go into your local area and you'll find a list of people who've done the qualification who are happy to help as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.